Hey guys, it's time to go on with our lesson for the argument iteration. I messed up in the last video. I thought I was recording a video where we completed the second half of this, but I had not. So I want to start again. So I just want you to know that, yes, we have done this by this point of the video if you're following the order of this module or of this lesson. So, but I'm going to remove it, okay? So we have done this part. Yeah, there we go. All right, so as you can see, I think I'll leave that there. I'll leave that there. It's bothering me not to have that there. Okay, so as you can see, the next concept that we're going to focus on is argument itself. So let's take a look at the definition. That is going to be the official definition for this course. I know you had a different definition in your textbook, but this is the one that we're going to use. And let me take this off because it's annoying me for a video. All right, so this is the new official definition, a set of statements where at least one statement, a premise, is given in support of another statement, a conclusion. So notice that the word statements appears 3 times. One reason why I wanted to start off clarifying and making sure that we understand what a statement is or is not is that is because that's what arguments are comprised of. Okay, that's the main ingredient. If there are no statements in a text or an argument, then in a text or a passage, then there is no argument. If there is no statement in an exchange, a verbal exchange, then there is no argument. Okay, so obviously, statements play a very important role in an argument, technically speaking, from the standpoint of logic. Now, one thing that I want you to write is something that you can already see here. So, just to clarify, I'm going to pick that up just a little bit, and I want you to write like this: statements. And then do an equal sign with a slash. That means are not. The word statements is not to be understood as equivalent to how we will be using the word arguments. Okay? Now, let's take a look to understand why. So as we know, a statement is a single assertion. You see how these are each discrete units? Now, statements can be much longer, like our conditional that we had written down, right? So this is a statement. But that by itself is not an argument. The conditional is a statement, but that by itself is not an argument. How do we know that? Because an argument has to have at least how many different kinds of statements? It has to have at least 2. We know that because of the word set right here, okay? So this brings us to one of our requirements for argument. So I want you to draw a bracket like this, and then I want you to write that there are at least, and then write out the word, not the number, because we're going to use S short for statements, and if you write the number 2, it's going to look like 25. So it's saying there are at least 2 statements. But at the same time, I want you to keep in mind that there could be more. By the way, don't go past this halfway part because we need to insert an example that has 3 sentences. So there could be more. Okay, so let's go back to this part of the definition. So it says where at least one statement, a premise, okay? So that's another key concept. We want to go ahead and put a triangle over that. So it's saying there's a statement that is functioning as a premise. It says that there is at least one, but as with the other kind of general claim, we want to say that there could be more. So there has to be at least one statement that has the role of a premise. Again, there could be more. All right. So then, what is the job of the premise? It is to give something. What is it giving? Support. Okay, so that is the job of the premise, is to give support, or it's given in support of what? Another statement called the conclusion. Okay, so I want us to write that we're going to say that this is requirement 1, that there are at least 2 statements. Then we want to say that this is requirement 2, okay, that there is at least 1 premise. And then we want to say that this is requirement 3, that there is a conclusion. Okay, so let's go ahead and do an example. We're going to write 3 sentences for our example. We're going to write P1. What do you think P means? Premise, yes. Okay, so we're going to copy the conditional that we already wrote as an example. Remember, all of these are statements. None of these by themselves are an argument. And we know that because an argument must reflect what? This requirement, at least 2 statements. There could be more. All right, so premise 1, we're just going to copy what we have for the conditional. If you are taking a philosophy class, and you want to have the example all right here, so make sure you're writing small enough to write 3 sentences. Philosophy class, then you are learning to think critically. Okay, notice it's an if-then statement. Remember, it's hypothetical. It's a unified whole. You might want to review this lesson. And actually, I want you to write another note, okay? And here's the note that I want you to write. I think I'm going to have to do it like this, okay? So I want you to add a note. If you need to, you can go a little bit outside of this text box and do maybe dots like that or fit it in here. But I want you to write that an argument could consist entirely, put this in capital letters, entirely of conditional statements. Again, if you ran out of room in your text box up here, you could do something like this to make sure that you put, that goes with the conditional statement notes, right? So here we said a conditional statement as a whole can be a premise or a conclusion, but furthermore, an argument could consist entirely of conditional statements. In other words, an argument can have premises and one or more premises, all of which are conditional statements, and that same argument's conclusion could also be a conditional statement. Okay, all right, so we've got, in this argument, we're just going to have one conditional statement. Remember, this is hypothetical. It's not saying you are taking a philosophy class. It's not saying you are learning to think critically. It's saying if we assume or imagine that this is happening, what else will be true at the same time? In premise 2, an assertion is going to be made that Sophia is taking a philosophy class. Okay. Some people are like, isn't that just merely repeating premise 1? No. Remember, this is hypothetical. It's saying if, okay? And if could stand for anybody. This is saying that a particular person is doing something, actually, right? And it can't be merely repeating premise 1, because just visually, you can see that premise 2 is not as long as premise 1. And you can see that there's content in premise 1 that is not in premise 2. For premise 2 to be exactly premise 1, we'd have to have the whole conditional and the if-then parts in it, which we do not. Okay, so conclusion, what do you think C stands for? Of course, conclusion. So if this is true, so let's imagine this hypothetical is true. And this is saying, hey man, guess what? This turns out to be the case for a specific person. What else will be true at the same time according to this? Think of this kind of like a rule, if you will. We would want to conclude that Sophia is what? Saying this is true, so what can we bring down as the conclusion? Sophia is learning to think critically. Okay, there we go.